All right, welcome back. We have the Rose Bowl this Thursday. Alabama playing Indiana in the playoff quarterfinals. It's the granddaddy of them all out there in Pasadena. Welcome back to the new SEC podcast. I'm Hunter Ziesman here with Randall Ledet Jr., and happy holidays to everyone tuning in. Randall, as we look at this game, most of everything that I see online, like everybody right now is saying that Alabama doesn't really have a chance. Indiana, true number one in the country. When you look at this game, do you see it that way, or how are you looking at this game at a high level?
I feel like at this point, I think these two teams, I think Alabama definitely has a chance. I feel like that was the same narrative that was being put out about the Oklahoma game as well. Like, I think people are really quick to attempt to write off Alabama. They are the second lowest seed still in the playoffs, ahead of Miami. I think they have a chance. Anytime you put the pads on and you play 60 minutes and you got two top quarterbacks in this game, they definitely have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that people have been using as the way to say, oh, it's too hard. It's about Mendoza. I think where Indiana's strong suit is on the defensive side. Mendoza definitely deserves all the flowers he's got. Heisman winner, comes into this game, probably going to be raining out in California. They might have to rely a little bit more on the running, which has worked great for them. Like I said, Alabama kind of being counted out here and there. And it's because I wouldn't say it's completely unwarranted. You look at the first game against Florida State, you look at the Georgia game, you look at the first Oklahoma game, the three losses that they have on the season, two of those, they've beat that team as well this season, the Florida State being the sole outlier there. You can get a good Alabama team on any given day, or you can get that bad Alabama team that we saw in the SEC championship, that we saw in the first quarter to half of the Oklahoma game. It's all about the team that shows up.
Yeah, and I truly believe they are a different team from week one. But in the two losses, Alabama's floor is, to me, has been proven to be that second Georgia game, and Georgia right now is the hottest team in the country. Like, I thoroughly believe that. But with Indiana, I understand why people feel that they are going to be overpowering on offense. I mean, they got two great running backs with Roman Hemby and Kalen Black. I mean, both these guys, for Black, 799 rushing yards, for Hemby, 918 rushing yards, paired with Mendoza, who really he just doesn't make a ton of mistakes. But what I will say that I've noticed is in the last 6 games, he's thrown 4 interceptions.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, he's thrown an interception in all but one game away from home. The only outlier there being the Purdue game. He only had 16 dropbacks in that one, but he's statistically, you've seen the things about his stats and how it compares to previous Heisman winners, and it partially is because of the running backs. It's what a lot of teams are kind of looking to do, or wish that they could do with a committee back system, is what Indiana's doing. They're running about 60% of the time, third most run play percentage in Power 4. When you got two guys averaging over 5 yards per carry, that's huge. And you look at Alabama, who's had a couple of issues with run gap fits. They've got great tacklers, Deontay Lawson, Justin Jefferson. You got Bray Hubbard coming down. If they read the gap right, there's a lot of room for Alabama to get a tackle for loss, but we've seen them be able to, maybe miss that gap, giving up some 6, 7, 8-yard rushes here and there. So that's going to be a huge part to looking in this game. I think even more so than Mendoza.
Yeah, especially when I think it really bodes to talking about like getting first downs and continuing drives. Those 6, 7, 8-yard carries on third down, on second down, make it a lot easier for Mendoza to have that playbook opened up. And so when I hear people feel that Alabama has no chance, I do believe they're looking at the Indiana's offense, which is extremely overpowering. It's gotten even better than last season. And the Indiana archetype, to me, reminds me a lot of the Notre Dame profile from last season, Jadarian Prince and Jeremiah Love with Roman Hemby and Kalen Black. You talked about those two running backs, 6 touchdowns for Hemby, 7 touchdowns for Black. But, what's interesting about Alabama is they have the 15th best pass defense in the country, 178 yards allowed. And so there's only been 2 games this season where Mendoza's been held under that number, 117 for Purdue and 168 for UCLA. He won both games, and he can do that because he has those 2 running backs. But it's not like Alabama with the 15th best pass defense yards per game wise. They have the ability to lock down quarterbacks, and they've played good quarterbacks in the SEC this season.
Yeah, and I think they were 8th in that stat until the last 2 games with Georgia and Oklahoma. So those were 2, they matter, 2 skewing games for that. I think 300 yards given up passing in the Oklahoma game, a couple of deep passes in the back and forth game. Indiana's played some top defenses. They played Ohio State when it comes to passing. Penn State, great pass defense as well. Yep. Oregon, good pass defense. So it's not going to be anything that they haven't seen. But I do think the narrative that Alabama can't stop Mendoza, I want to challenge that a little bit, because I think that they've shown that they can give quarterbacks a hard time. They've jumped back and forth between man and zone. They have safeties that can step down with Bray Hubbard. They have great corners. Dijon Lee, seen the game-breaking plays that Xavier Brown's had. They match up really, really well one-on-one. They're getting better at their zones. They're getting better in run defense. And I don't remember who it was talking about they can't get pressure on a quarterback. Alabama can't get to the quarterback. I challenge that a little bit too.
Did they miss the second half of the Oklahoma game?
I mean, five sacks in that game. They're not a pass rush heavy team like if you're looking at a Texas A&M or an Oklahoma, but they can get to a quarterback. I'm going to watch the blind side a little bit in this game, because I think that's something you can do, is get pressure on Mendoza. His line isn't the best. You look at the Penn State game. You look at the Wisconsin game. They got pressure on him.
They definitely did. And you talked about the Penn State game and the quality of defenses that Indiana has played this season. Record aside, when I brought up that stat around the interceptions that he has thrown, six this season, one against Iowa, one against Oregon, one against Ohio State, one against Penn State. Those are four of the best teams in the Big Ten. The two bad games I would say would be Maryland and UCLA, right? But still, that's 6 interceptions. And so when he has played good defenses, I'm not trying to take anything away from a Heisman quarterback. When he has played good defenses, he's not playing mistake-free football. And in the playoffs, minimizing mistakes, I would say, is a top 2 priority. And so for Alabama to have a chance, they got to be able to stifle a guy like Mendoza. What I think is in his favor, guys like Omar Cooper, guys like Elijah Sarek, guys like Charlie Becker, all these guys over 500 receiving yards, 2 guys with 12 touchdowns, one guy with 12 touchdowns with Sarek and one guy with 11 touchdowns with Cooper. He's got some dogs at the receiver position.
And they can get the ball out quick. That's a thing that he's been able to do. That RPO heavy scheme has worked to getting him those yards, because he has the great running backs. You have that option. You get it out on a slant. You got guys who can make the play after catch. It's going to really depend on Alabama's play recognition in this, seeing what's going on, not to get too overzealous in the run game. We saw that a couple times where Alabama and Oklahoma stepping down to stop the run, some balls lofted in kind of over those hook zones, curl zones to that no man's land. Alabama's going to have to be on their game. I do think that this is an even-ish matchup, though, from an offense at Indiana to a defense at Alabama. And I think that personally, I see it overstated a little bit that Indiana is going to be able to just somehow dominate Alabama's defense. I don't think that that's going to be the case in a rain game.
I just don't.
Nonetheless,
I don't think this college football season amongst these top 8 teams, there's been a huge gap in terms of who's better than who. And we might see that this upcoming week on Wednesday and Thursday. But I truly believe this final 8, these teams are a lot closer than maybe some publications and media believe to be. And especially in this matchup, this is not a normal 1 versus 9 matchup. This is a SEC runner-up team in Alabama. If you're an Alabama fan looking at this offense, what are some things that should excite you in this matchup?
At the Alabama offense, a couple things here. I think, you saw Alabama get back into rhythm. That's something that you hadn't seen since the Auburn game. The Thanksgiving, it's been since then we've really seen this team click. We didn't see it in the Georgia game in the SEC championship. We didn't really see it until late in the Oklahoma game. Now you carry a little bit of that momentum, and that they made those adjustments at half to provide Ty Simpson more opportunities. It was they got cleaner pockets. They started to scheme around quicker passes. Let's get the ball out quick, throw some screens. Let's start challenging Oklahoma's pass rush. We can't just expect to sit back. He started getting a little bit more comfortable stepping up into the pocket, showing that confidence. I think that's a great aspect to carry into this game, is that you've started to find a little bit of that rhythm.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge, and I think it's going to be what they're going to need to rely on at this point of the season. We know where their offensive strengths lie. It's in that passing attack. What's interesting about someone like Daniel Hill, 43 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. It's not about the yards. It's about mixing in the running game within the play calling. The stat sheet, the way they kind of keep stats in college, they take into account sacks. And so last game, I think they finished with under 30 rushing yards. But I mean, Ty had negative 22 rushing yards because of sacks. It's a point of the offense that has not necessarily been there all season, but at this point, it's not too much of a deterrent from them winning games.
No, it's good. It's a good point to bring up. The running has been just an accessory to the offense. Like the passing is what they want to do. You have to run the ball. I've been there in that moment of frustration. Like, why are we running the ball? It's 3rd and 8. We're running. It's all to establish something. And Alabama's not relying on the run to get them to where they need to be. They're using it to open the field a little bit. This game's going to be hard to do it. Indiana is really built more as a run stop dedicated defense. One of the best in the nation at stopping the run, meeting the running back at the line of scrimmage. They're a little bit more bend, don't break in the pass game. Great tacklers. They don't let a lot build up after the catch. Good in defending screens. But Alabama's going to need to still mix in those runs as good as Indiana is at stopping them to keep them honest as a run stop team. So that way they don't go to a lighter formation. That way they don't start adding more DBs on the field because Alabama's in pass only. So the rushing, as frustrating as it might be for Alabama fans to see it continuously happening for 1 to 2 yards, you have to do it. You have to. You can't go away from it.
Yeah. I was watching a video. I mean, we were talking about it, where it was like, you're so proficient at passing, like why even run the football? And this you have to call run plays to keep the defense honest. One of the things I really liked about the Oklahoma game that Alabama won was their distribution of the passing receptions. 18 receptions last game between Brooks, Horton, Bernard. Horton, Bernard, and Brooks all had 5 receptions. I think Cuevas and Williams and there was one more guy who had 1 each. So I like the distribution of the ball. The top 3 receivers had about 13 yards per catch. So they were making big plays, multiple passes that were over 30 yards. How much of a factor is that going to be needed in this game against the 22nd ranked pass defense when it comes to Indiana?
You got to be you have to continue to do that. That's what's been Alabama's strong suit all year, is that you never know who the ball is going to go to. They're not a team that relies on a singular guy to be their leader. Now, it's going to be tough because you have Indiana, who from the safety position, incredible coverage, incredible tackling. They play deep, they play into the box. So you really have to, if you're Ty Simpson, be aware of where those 2 guys are. So that's important, but it is good to get these guys involved. I think getting Cuevas back for the Oklahoma game was massive because of the outlet that he provides Ty Simpson, especially if you're looking at teams that have a good pass rush. Indiana's pass rush might be down a little bit. We saw Stephen Daly, injury with the Big Ten championship game. He was the number 2 on the team in pressures. So there might be more room to sit in the pocket in this game, as opposed to how he was fighting for his life in the Oklahoma game and having to step up in the face of pressure.
Definitely. And this Indiana defense, the last time they played was December 6th. So it's been a couple of weeks, but they played against Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, Julian Saint. I mean, a Heisman candidate quarterback. So probably the best test they could have going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Good red zone defense. Like they're good in extended drives. I mean, this Indiana defense is solid. And I think that's deserves more talk about than Mendoza in the offense at what they can do. I think if you can stifle Alabama's, I mean, we saw that happen in the Oklahoma game. That's how they started, is that Alabama couldn't move the ball. So as I don't want to say poor Oklahoma's offense is, they were able to do things because they had more reps and they had good field position. And they, in a game like this, you can't give Indiana that luxury that you gave Oklahoma, because they're going to take advantage of it. They're not going to let you get back in the game. So,
there's a lot there. And I mean, like I said, it's 47.5 over under, 6.5 line for Indiana. So Vegas doesn't think this is going to be a blowout. The media might think it's going to be a blowout. Final thoughts on this game, keys for Alabama. Like I keep going back to, like, if you're an Alabama fan, what should you be looking for in this game, and some keys and just thoughts on the betting notes.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, it's getting out slow. You got to get out hot. Indiana's going to manage the clock much more effectively than Oklahoma did in the last matchup. So you can't give away short field positions. You got to get out hot. If, in fact, it does rain in this game, like it's looking like it will, it's a great equalizer, but it also opens up the opportunity to play the short pass game a little bit more, which you saw success with throughout the season. Cueva, swing passes, screens, etc. Things like that have worked really well for you. They work well in the rain. You have some sure-handed receivers. We've seen some struggles with Ryan Williams, but you have some guys who can make catches, make plays. Indiana, tough to get yards after catch, but if you can nickel and dime your way down the field, I think that's a key for Alabama. Play the short game, use your weapons.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be huge, and we haven't seen this Alabama team kind of jump on a team in a while, right? Obviously the Oklahoma game was slow, the Auburn game was slow, the Oklahoma game prior to that they had lost. We need to get them back to the Missouri game, back to the first Georgia game, and I still think they have it in them. And for Indiana, we've talked about this offense, we've talked about this defense. I mean, 22nd best passing defense in the country. I focus on that. They've given up 191 yards per game. 8th in the country offensively in yards per game. When I look at Indiana stats, I always look at it from a vacuum of like their best teams because there's a lot of junk in the Big Ten. Sorry. But, when I look at who they've played with Oregon, when they played with Ohio State, this team is defendable. I think it's a close game. I trust Signetti. It's just going to be a good one. It's going to be a good game.
Yeah. Yeah. On the flip side, some keys I see for Indiana. I love the committee back system that they're running. It limits Alabama's possessions potentially. It can hinder the amount of times we've seen it take for Alabama to get hot. It takes 2 or 3 possessions to find your rhythm. So I think that's really important. Defensively, a key for Indiana. You see Ty Simpson in many, many games making adjustments at the line, almost to a detriment to where the play clock has been a real factor because he's seen the defense shift. Oh, we're going to do this instead. Really good at making those reads at the line and the audibles. As Indiana, key for me is how do you adjust to that? Because you've been so heavy on the run stop. Now, this guy is calling some interesting plays that use a lot of man in motion, a lot of adjustments. So how do you defensively adapt to that is a key for me. But again, I think this is a close game, and I'm taking the under for sure in this one. I think it's a defensive matchup.
I think it's definitely a defensive matchup. I think that's kind of been the theme of the playoffs in some capacity. When you look at the A&M Miami matchup, these are two pretty even teams in the trenches. I think I might give the overall edge to Alabama when it comes to the linebackers. The secondaries are relatively even offensively. I think that Indiana's stats pop off the paper, obviously. I mean, Omar Cooper's cold. Elijah Sarrett's cold. These two running backs are great. Black was held to 69 rushing yards against Ohio State. Ohio State has the 5th best rush defense in the country. But I think Indiana takes the edge in this one. It's going to be close, though. I'm going to say 23-20. Similar to that Oregon-Indiana game where it was 30-20.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the Big Ten championship as a good litmus test here of this Indiana team. I'm going to take Alabama 20-16. They have something they're fighting. If they look anything like the second half of the Oklahoma game, I'm taking them in this one. You get LT Overton back, great at rushing the passer. Mendoza will fill that heat. I think it's a low scoring game. Both teams take a little while to get started. But ultimately, I think Alabama moves on here to the dismay of many in national media that I've been seeing.
Yeah. I mean, people want that story, right? They want the Heisman quarterback. They want him to advance. Signetti's easy to pull for. He's got some SEC bloodline, of course, in him. And they're both even teams. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama won. I mean, my prediction was a 3-point game. But I want to know what y'all think here. We've really been enjoying covering Alabama, covering SEC football, talking about the playoffs this season. And, drop your predictions below. Let us know what you think, score-wise, stats-wise, over-under. We love to see it here. And as always, I'm Randall Ledet Jr. We got Hunter Ziesman here, and it's a new SEC podcast.